Alright fellas, so I spent an entire ride season on the big Sportsman now. It's got about 1,000 miles on it, it's been through a decent wreck, and now that all that remains is the payment, I thought I'd do an update video on the Polaris Sportsman XP1000. If you've been following the channel for a while, you probably know that Sportsman wasn't my first choice. When me and Flying Brian set out to find an ATV to trade the Yamaha Grizzly in on, the single thought on my mind was Scrambler. Fortunately for me, when we finally found the Scrambler, it was sitting right next to the Sportsman. And for an older, plus-size model like myself, the Sportsman just had too many features to pass up. The first thing you're going to notice with mounting this steed is how comfortable it is. The seat is plush. Like super plush, and the ergonomics are near perfect. Even in the standing position, the Sportsman just feels right for a bigger guy.
I'm not fat, I'm big boned.
Well, it's definitely not a pure sport. The styling is sleek and aggressive enough to at least call your attention over to some of the more functional points. Arced A-arms that give you real-world usability and ground clearance, and drive modes that deliver mood-specific rider experience, and a ride that is just unbelievably plush. Now that brings me to my first criticism of the Sportsman. When the Sportsman comes from the factory, the softest setting on the shocks are so soft that they're almost unusable. What the hell? They're squishy, and I mean really squishy. For anything slightly more aggressive than a demo ride around the parking lot, the softest setting's almost completely unusable. It's so soft that under hard acceleration and a slight ascent, I actually sheared the oil cover on the bottom of the skid plate completely off. Some 27s and a couple clicks with a slug wrench definitely took care of that problem. Now let's stick with the ride and talk some tires. The stock CSTs, they're basically a joke for this machine. Now don't get me wrong, they're not a bad tire. Those 26 CSTs on a mid-powered ATV like the Sportsman 570 is probably a great setup, but they're not going to last long on the big boys. About 760 miles is all I could get out of them. But if I had to describe those CSTs in one word on the Sportsman, penetrable. Same damn tire that I just plugged up. The power from this machine can't be understated. Yes, the Outlander 1000 is more powerful, but that margin is small, and at 90 horsepower, basically unnoticeable. Now let's talk that drive-by-wire throttle system. At first I wasn't really sure about it. It seems like something that can fail. But failure hasn't been the case. The drive-by-wire throttle system has been super dependable. You actually wouldn't know it was drive-by-wire unless somebody told you. Having the throttle modes is actually an awesome feature. When I bought it, I thought it was going to be all performance mode all the time. That's really not the case. This thing is every bit as aggressive as you want it to be in standard mode. I find myself riding in standard mode most of the time. Now when the trails are smooth and you can really let her eat, click of the button in performance mode is like throwing a tune on the machine. Completely different ride, much more aggressive, and super fun. So the EPS system on Polaris machines is very, very good at slow speeds. We touched on this on the Outlander vs. Sportsman a little bit, but what I'm comparing it to is the Yamaha Grizzly. On the Sportsman, EPS at high speeds is just a little too twitchy. Yamaha has actually nailed this on the Grizzly 700. The EPS tapers down just enough at high speeds, giving you the perfect amount of assist no matter how fast you're going down the trail. The mediator for this on the Sportsman is all-wheel drive. EPS and all-wheel drive at high speeds is just the right amount of assist through rougher conditions. The all-wheel drive system isn't something that I was too enthused about either, to be honest. Coming from true four-wheel drive with diff lock, I didn't think all-wheel drive was going to be enough in every situation. I couldn't have been more wrong. All-wheel drive on the Sportsman is super dependable. There hasn't been a condition that I've encountered that it hasn't been able to get through. The combination of power and Polaris's all-wheel drive system is going to get you through just about anything. The question on many of your minds is going to be reliability. And that's a good question. As most of you know, I did have a clutch issue early on in the life of this machine. At about 18 hours, the one-way bearing seized up, making the clutch unable to shift. So you can hear the belt rattle in the background. Carbon brake is on. Can't shift it for nothing. But the new clutch has about 80 hours on it, and I haven't had any issues with it at all. And if it does, my plan is to either upgrade the clutch or switch to the revised clutch on the 2019 model. They definitely fixed the clutching issue on the 2019 model. It engages faster and smoother, and I think it's going to be much more reliable than it was in previous years. Go ahead and take off. About 2100. The drive components are beefy. Beefy hubs, A-arms, axles, all comparable to a relatively heavy side-by-side. Bigger in some cases. The components on this machine are actually bigger than the 900S. And by far the biggest and most durable on any ATV in the market. Now at this point, Polaris has had time to figure out the issues with this machine. But after about 4 consecutive years of having issues, they've earned a reputation for poor reliability. How long is this machine going to last, and how reliable is it going to be? They went through some heat issues in 2015, a weak pinion plate in 2016 and 17, and a clutch issue as far up as even this model. And that's definitely going to be a turnoff for some people. But what I can say is, for every horror story, there's about 1,000 more stories of super reliability on this machine and some of the other Polaris models. I can also say that the 2019 Sportsman XP1000 is probably the best ATV Polaris has ever made. Ease of maintenance is probably one of the greatest strengths of this machine. Polaris wants you to maintain it. Fluid changes are easy. The clutch placement, although unusual, is pretty accessible if you have to make a change on the trail. There's really no reason to take this machine into the shop for maintenance. One thing you will want to change is the air filter. The one that comes stock is a paper filter with a water resistant sleeve, and the air box definitely allows some water and debris to enter. So a good filter is a must. Personally, I went with the Uni 2-stage foam filter. For around 30 bucks, it's definitely a decent upgrade. For me, this machine is just a weekend toy, so all of the 1,000 miles have been reasonably aggressive trail riding. I'm pretty impressed that my bearings, bushings, and brakes are all still good. My buddy Marauder Mitchelli hasn't had the same experience. He's replaced bushings and brakes well within the first 1,000 miles. Discussed it at length, and I'm not entirely sure why we've had such a different experience. The only difference in our setup is that he runs his shocks just a little stiffer than mine. As with any machine, it's important to keep up on basic maintenance. Greasing and maintenance are definitely going to prolong the life of all of your components, and definitely going to prolong the life of your ATV. So if you're wondering if you should buy this machine, I really don't have a good answer for you. Do other manufacturers have a better reputation for reliability? Yes. Is 90 horsepower more than you're going to need? Probably. For the price you pay for this wheeler, is it just worth stepping up to a side-by-side? Probably not. Most guys don't need 90 horsepower in a quad, but I'm a big guy. I tried a big single in the Grizzly 700, and it left me wanting just a little more. You can definitely save some dough by going with the 850, but they make 1,000, so that's always going to be on your mind.
Do you want to eat first, then do it?
No, I want to knock it out.
Back to you.